Alongside Rob Lewis, I'm Austin Price. Positional previews kick off this week with quarterbacks, Rob, and maybe it's the great mystery. Who will be Tennessee's starting quarterback when they roll out there against Bowling Green? They've got a lot of guys in that room, but nobody set in stone as that signal caller that they can count on.
Yeah, you brought in 2 transfers in Hendon Hooker and Milton. You got Harrison Bailey, the golden child, 5-star recruit last year. Did a little here and there, but it's a complete mystery. I mean, everybody thought we were going to have Caden Salter in the mix. That obviously is no longer the case. And then Brian Maurer, kind of the absolute X factor, a guy who's been going to his 3rd year, has played some here and there, and has pretty much been all over the board when he's been on the field.
We'll start with Joe Milton and Hendon Hooker. We'll start with those 2 guys. They're the transfers. They roll in here. Hooker goes through the spring. Milton does not. Is that a disservice to Joe Milton that he wasn't able to go through spring, or it kind of is what it is?
Well, I mean, I think it's got to be an advantage for Hooker, but not an overwhelming one. And I mean, they're 2 very different guys. I mean, Milton is just a physical freak, 6'5", 240 pounds. Went to a big-time program at Michigan. Was very up and down. Had some huge games. Threw for over 300 yards against Indiana and Michigan State, but also lost both of those games. He completed less than 60% of his passes last year. Threw 4 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. There's obviously a lot to like. He has a cannon, but to me, it's all about accuracy and picking up the offense. Hooker, this seems kind of like slow and steady. He's a little more mobile than Milton, and didn't really impress in the spring game. But if you go back and look at Virginia Tech, he averaged almost 9 yards per attempt, whereas Milton averaged just a little over 7, which you wouldn't really think when you just talk about arm strength. So both intriguing candidates, and I get why fans are in love with Milton. I mean, you look at the guy, and I mean, it looks like Cam Newton. I mean, just right there. And if Josh Heupel, is the quarterback whisperer, a lot of people are, maybe Milton's the guy.
Well, sometimes the change of scenery just does somebody good, and we'll see if that's either of those 2. Steady Eddie when it comes to the group that was here last year, it's got to be Harrison Bailey. I mean, he does nothing that just stands out as a super, but he's really steady and does a lot of stuff solid, and is a guy that had a really, really solid spring, and obviously had a huge day in front of all the fans for the spring game, which is added to the lure.
Yeah, and I mean, doesn't have a big arm, is not mobile. I mean, do you need to be mobile in Heupel's offense? I mean, it kind of seems like you do, but can he adapt to if Bailey emerges as the most competent guy? A lot of fans are in love with Bailey just because of that 5-star status, and I understand that. He obviously has a lot of tools. He's cerebral. I think he does a good job, or he did a good job as a freshman, at least, processing things quickly, getting the ball out. But physically, he doesn't have some of the same gifts as the other 2 guys.
And then there's Brian Maurer, who may be as talented as anybody on this team, but for every 2 steps forwards he takes, there's a player or 2 that just leave you going, how did he see that? What, that's just a detrimental play to Tennessee's success.
If you're just talking about arm strength and mobility. The ability to make plays with your feet, to extend plays, to run the ball. I mean, and I'm not an expert on what Central Florida was, but I watched him, quite a bit here and there, and he seems like he would perhaps just be the best fit from a purely physical aspect. But I mean, you said it. I mean, my goodness. I mean, he'll be on the field for 3 downs, and he's likely to make one throw where you're just like, my God. How do you do that?
Either way, my God good or my
exactly.
God bad.
And I think if you're a head coach, he's just the kind of quarterback that terrifies you. And I'll be very surprised if he emerges at the top of this list.
All right. I'm not asking you for a prediction on starter, but what 2 do you think it comes down to?
Bailey and Milton.
I agree. And I do think that potentially Hendon Hooker is kind of that 3rd guy laying in the weeds that could, because of his experience, swing the job. But I think this comes down to Joe Milton, Harrison Bailey. He's Rob Lewis. I'm Austin Price.